There is a game about a small silent creature with a bent nail walking down into a dead kingdom, and on the surface it is beautiful. Soft blue light, rain on windows, a cheerful mapmaker humming to himself in the dark. Underneath, almost every single thing in it is a small, quiet tragedy. Tonight I want to walk you through those, not the big plot, the little ones. The miner who is composing a burial song for her own family while she works. The knight who has been guarding a door for decades and does not know that the person on the other side of it died a long time ago. The old stag who takes you everywhere and has slowly worked out he is the last of his kind. The bug who spent his whole existence repairing one signpost, and what happens to that sign if you kill him. There are hundreds of these. Most of them are in corners you can walk past without noticing, and I will tell you which ones are stated plainly, and which ones are only what the world implies, because the difference matters, and because this game is unusually careful about what it refuses to say. You do not need to follow any of it. Let it be background. Let it be somebody talking quietly in a room while you fall asleep. If this helps, a like on the video helps other people find it, and you are welcome to say in the comments where you are listening from tonight. That is all I will ask. Now let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Settle in and stop rearranging yourself. We are going to start at the top, in a small town with almost nobody left in it. The town is called Dirtmouth, and the name is a joke that stops being funny once you understand it. It sits on the surface above the ruins, and there is a well in the middle of it, and everyone who used to live there went down that well. Not all at once, one at a time, over years, chasing wealth or glory, or some private idea of enlightenment. Almost none of them came back up. The town swallowed its own population, slowly, through a hole in the middle of the square. There is one resident left, and his name is Elderbug, and he stands near the entrance for the entire game with nothing to do. He is the first person you meet, and the last one still there at the end. He tells you the town has fallen quiet. He tells you that dreams are not worth it, that creatures turn mad down there, and travelers come back with their memories stripped out of them. And then he greets the next traveler anyway, and the next. He knows exactly where you are going and roughly what will happen to you, and he says hello every single time, because he has worked out that if he does not, nobody will. If you read his mind quietly, and there is a blade in that world that lets you hear the last surface thought of almost anything, what is underneath is not warmth, it is bafflement. To descend into that ruin, he thinks, why? Things are so much simpler up here. There is one thing that changes him, and it costs you something to do. Very late on there is a flower. It is grown for somebody else, for a completely different purpose, and it breaks if you take a single hit while carrying it. If you give it to Elderbug instead, he is floored. He asks whether it is really a gift. He asks whether he can really have it, and then he keeps it, and the world seems a little less faded to him, and afterwards when you read his mind, it has changed entirely. These petals, he thinks, so white, can you see them too, from wherever you are? He has decided, at some point in there, that you are probably already dead. Down the road from him, there is a shop, and the shopkeeper is a small round bug called Sly, who has no memory of anything. You find him first at the bottom of the well, slumped in an abandoned hovel, glassy-eyed, half gone to the plague. You strike him once and he snaps out of it and goes home. He opens a shop. He is friendly. He remembers none of it, and Elderbug is quietly disappointed about that. He says he had hoped for grand tales from a returning wanderer, and instead, the fellow seems to remember almost nothing. While Sly was sitting in that hovel losing himself, you could read his thoughts, and they were not about the plague, they were about money. Geo, Geo, all the world is Geo, no nail can withstand its might. And that turns out to be a confession, because Sly was not always a shopkeeper. He was the great nail sage, the finest swordsman that kingdom ever produced, teacher of the three masters who now live scattered across the map, each of them speaking about him with something close to reverence. He gave it up. He decided that money mattered more than the blade, and he walked away from all of it. And then something pulled him underground, and he lost even the memory of who he had been. In his infected days, he mutters about one of his own students. Oro, you oaf, you wield your nail like a club. If you learn all three of his students' techniques and come back, he takes you down to his basement and shows you what he really is, and gives you a charm made of a nail master's passion, skill, and regrets. And then he says the only tender thing he ever says, which is that wherever those three are now, whatever they are doing, he hopes they are looking after themselves. He does not go and see them. None of them go and see each other. We will come back to that. There is another shop below the town, in the ruined crossroads, run by a large motherly bug called Salubra, who sells charms. She talks about the abandoned village outside her door as though it were warm and full of life. It is not. It is empty, and everything in it is dead or worse. She also has an enormous, entirely unhidden crush on you. She admires your horns. She admires your nail. And if you read her mind, she is mortified about it. Dear, dear, she thinks, I really must hold it together, must appear calm, but this creature is just divine. You are, for the record, a small hollow shell with no face. The crossroads themselves were once the busiest place in the kingdom, trade roads, packed with traffic. The mapmaker, when you meet him down there, tries to imagine how they must have looked at the height of it. Now there is nothing moving but husks, and there is something worse about that region, which is that it can get worse. Partway through, after you gain a certain ability or wake a certain sleeper, the crossroads change permanently. Orange growths swell out of the walls. Paths seal shut. The husks mutate into something more aggressive, and there is no way to undo it. That region is the one place in the world that visibly rots in response to your progress, and once it has happened, you simply live in the new version of it for the rest of your time down there. There is a creature down there, in a stolen suit of armor. It is huge and loud, and it stomps around a storeroom shouting about being the strongest, and it is not a knight at all. Inside that armor is a maggot. It found one of the kingdom's 5 great knights asleep in his shell, and it wanted that shell, and it took it, not out of malice, but because it had siblings living in that storeroom, and it wanted the strength to protect them. If you go back later and read its dying memory, you get the whole thing in one breath. It wanted it, the strength to protect the others. When it saw that knight sleeping, safe in his big armored shell, it wasn't madness that drove it. It just wanted it. And then, at the end, but in the end, if strength cannot save you, then what can? Down another corridor in the same region, there is an old grub weeping in a room full of empty jars. Somebody has stolen his entire colony. 46 of them, sealed into glass containers and scattered across every corner of the kingdom, in caves and behind false walls, and in the flooded parts nobody visits. You can find them one at a time and break the glass, and each one wriggles away home, and when you read a freed grub's mind, the only word in it is home. The grub father thanks you for each one. If you read him, the only thing in his head is happy, happy, happy. And when you have brought all 46 back, you find him lying bloated in the middle of his room with muffled grub chatter coming from inside him. That is, apparently, simply how they work. The charm you get for it speaks of grubs who will move to the next stage of their lives, but nothing about it is explained, and you are left standing in a room listening to voices inside somebody's body. The one who stole them lives in a tower reached with a key found on a corpse. The thing in the tower is called the Collector, and it is made of the same darkness as you are. It keeps Hallownest's creatures in glass jars, living and dead, side by side, and it has a particular fixation on grubs. It knows exactly where every one of them is. When you defeat it, it hands you a map of its own hoard, and its inner voice is not cruel at all. It is delighted. My love, it thinks. Protected at last. A safe space for you and you and you. It is not torturing anything. It genuinely believes it is looking after them. And there is a detail in that fight that most people only notice once. If you die to the Collector, then on your next attempt your own shade, the dark half that comes out of you when your shell breaks, is already in the room, sealed in a jar, waiting. It has added you to the collection. There is a corridor above that tower, in a garden much later on, where a dead aristocrat lies clutching the key you needed to get in. Nobody explains who that was, or why they were carrying it, or what happened to them. They are just there, with the key, a long way from the door it opens. Let us go sideways for a moment, into the green. There is a region overgrown with moss and vines and soft light, and the creatures living in it were dreamed into existence by something sleeping under a lake. That is not a metaphor. The tablets in that place say so directly. The greater mind once dreamed of Leaf, and cast these caverns so, and the Moskin describe themselves as growing tired away from her, their leaves falling. Her name is and she never speaks. Not once, anywhere in the entire game. She is a god with no dialogue at all. Much later, in a place where every powerful being in the kingdom is summoned to be fought, she is described as barely detectable, a sleeping mass. Whatever strength she once possessed faded beyond time and tune. There is another tablet in that region that is quietly one of the saddest lines in Hallownest, because it was written before anything went wrong. Though once our lands, it says, a pale being lays claim to the caverns ahead. It may appear benevolent, but it does not share our dream. Be wary to wander that place. They were right. Nobody listened. Deeper in the green there is a cave, and in the cave there is an enormous creature who lies there talking to you about killing things. He is the hunter, and he gives you a journal and asks you to fill it. Every creature you defeat enough times earns an entry, and beneath each entry he writes his own note. That journal is where a great deal of the world's grief actually lives, and he does not realize he is writing any of it. He is not a nice person. He tells you plainly that as a youth he and his siblings hunted each other in the nest. He says that when he learned his companions were actually living creatures, he began to kill them on sight, because that is the nature of the hunt. He believes the kingdom fell because its people forgot how to hunt for themselves. And the cave he lives in is not a cave. It is his own hood. His body continues down below the floor, and you never see how far. His last thought about you, before you have proven yourself, is almost admiring. It is stronger even than me, he thinks. Does it know that? Will it return to hunt me? I hope it tries. When the journal is full, he gives you a mark and moves on, to wait for the next hunt. He has no home and no kingdom and no ending, only pauses. Elsewhere in the green there is a small vain knight stuck in the mouth of a giant fly, and rescuing him is the beginning of one of the strangest arcs in that world. His name is Zote. He is a self-declared knight of great renown from somewhere outside the kingdom. He is the weakest thing you will ever fight, and his nail is a piece of shellwood he has named Life Ender. He is also, if you look at him for long enough, extremely sad. He has a personal philosophy consisting of 57 numbered precepts, which he will recite to you at length, and which are posted on the wall of a basement much later. Most of them are nonsense of the funniest kind. Up is up, down is down. You cannot breathe water. One thing is not another. Eggshells are brittle. And then, scattered among the jokes, there are these. Mothers will always betray you. Beware the jealousy of fathers. Never accept a promise. Never forgive. Do not dream. Nobody in that world ever explains those. But in a later fight, if you read his mind, what surfaces is not bravado. It is a question. I'll kill 1,000 more, he thinks. Will that be enough, father? And if you never rescue him, if you walk past him in that fly's mouth and keep going, he dies off screen. You come back, and there is nothing at the spot but his nail and his shell. Striking that little pile earns an achievement, and the achievement is called neglect. Beyond the green, the caverns turn to fungus and standing water, and the tone changes again. There is a clan of mushroom people down there whose entire philosophy is the surrender of the self. Their tablets praise the hive mind and dismiss individuality as the melancholy of disparity. Their arrangement with the kingdom was a straightforward trade. Warily shall we accept the will of the worm, one tablet says. Its prescience shields us. Security in exchange for autonomy. It did not save them either. Nearby, a girl is lost. Her name is Bretta, and she is standing in the middle of a hostile region with no idea how she got there. When you get her out, she is not relieved so much as astonished. You came here to rescue me, she says. The girl that everyone just ignores. She goes home to the town and starts keeping a diary about you. It escalates. She writes about a beautiful being with sharp horns gleaming white. She builds a small shrine. And then a different knight comes home from the fighting pits, wearing a helmet he took as a trophy, and she tears the shrine down and rebuilds it for him instead. Portraits. Posters of the 57 precepts. A statue in the basement. You can strike that statue with the dream blade and fight her fantasy version of him, an idealized, competent, heroic Zote who fights beautifully and shouts about doing it all for his queen. He gets stronger every time you beat him. The journal entry for him is one line. Figment of an obsessed mind. Lacks grace, but becomes stronger with every defeat. And eventually she leaves. She goes over the cliffs and out of the kingdom entirely, with only the briefest word of farewell, and the old bug at the gate mentions it in passing, as though it were weather. There is a merchant in the fungal region who sells charms that break when you die, and a customer who eats them. The maker is a nervous little creature called Leg Eater. The customer is a member of a traveling troupe who arrives in town partway through and asks, very politely, for your fragile charms. She smells them first. She goes into raptures about the craftsmanship, and then she swallows them and later returns them to you unbreakable for an enormous amount of money. At the end of that arrangement, if you follow it all the way, she has tracked the charm maker to the surface by scent, and there is nothing left of him in her tent but his claws on the floor. She departs shortly afterwards, saying only that now she can follow her master. Higher up in the fungal wastes there is a village of mantises, and they are one of the only groups in the entire kingdom who did not fall. Their greeting to strangers is not friendly. Wanderers seeking death, welcome, may you find swift end upon our claws. But they held the line against the plague through sheer discipline, and after you beat their 3 ruling sisters in single combat, the entire village stops attacking you. Every mantis in that place puts down its weapon and bows as you walk past. They are the only faction in Hallownest who ever does that. There is a 4th throne in that hall, broken, sitting beside the 3. The broken throne belonged to their brother. He embraced the plague and turned on his own sisters, and they threw him out, and the throne was left as it is rather than repaired or removed. It sits there in the middle of their hall, permanently, so that nobody forgets. He is not just a traitor in the political sense. He also refused to accept his own daughter's relationship, because the person she loved came from outside the tribe. He never forgave it. And when you finally meet him, in a garden on the other side of the kingdom, there is nothing left in his head at all. You read him and get 3 words: outcast, survive, kill, intruder, destroy. Our lands now. His daughter is dead. Her grave is up above a travel station, half swallowed by vines, and the inscription is 4 words long: here sleeps the traitor's child. We will come back to who loved her. Near the Mantis village there is a memorial to a warrior who was killed by them, and his story is one of the ugliest small tragedies in that kingdom. He was called Elder Hu, and he came to that region convinced it was infected and needed purifying. It was not. The mantises were among the few who had kept their minds. He attacked them anyway, and they killed him defending themselves. When you strike his corpse with the dream blade and fight what is left of him, he starts out certain. Many have come to purify this place, he says, but all who dwell here are eventually consumed, and then, after he loses, the certainty comes off all at once. Those proud lords, he says, were they truly monsters? If there was madness in that village, it was I who brought it. They were right to cast me out. And then the last thing he says, and it is a question rather than a statement, to kill me. There is a train station in that region with a giraffe weevil sitting in it, who has found a fungus that grows nowhere else, and has therefore decided to remain in an abandoned station forever, eating. She looks at you the way she looks at everything. This little creature looks tasty, she thinks. I wonder, should I eat it? The others around here were awfully bland. Now let us go down into the city, because that is where the kingdom's heart used to be, and it is the largest graveyard in Hallownest. It rains there constantly, indoors, in a cavern hundreds of feet underground. Lamps still burn in the streets. Water runs down the windows of houses nobody lives in anymore. And there is an answer to where the rain comes from, and it is not poetic at all. There is a lake in the caverns above, and it is leaking through the ceiling. That is the whole thing. The most atmospheric place in that world is atmospheric because of a structural failure, and the same water carries on down through the floor into the sewers below. There is a wanderer who spends the entire story asking that exact question. We will get to him. The city has a historian in it, a bad-tempered scholar who buys relics from you and will not sell you a single thing from his own collection. He is trying to reconstruct what existed before the kingdom, and he has a suspicion about it. This civilization may claim itself the first, he says, but something else did exist within this place before Hallownest. He is right, and he never finds out how right. He also has a habit that is easy to miss. Every time you kill one of the 3 sleepers holding the seal, he closes his shop for a while and goes and stands in front of a memorial statue, looking at it. He does not know what you are doing. He can feel it happening anyway. There is a member of the old upper caste living in an apartment in that city, and she is one of the few people down there who is genuinely, cheerfully horrible. Her name is Emilicia, and she was cast out by her own class before the fall, and that expulsion is the only reason she is still alive, because the rest of her caste are now the husks shambling around outside her door. She is delighted about this. In times past, she says, I wouldn't have spoken with your likes, but now the rest of my caste are wonderfully, distantly deceased. Her private thought about you is that you will die on the guard's nails, and that she will outlive you as well. Deeper into the city there is a building that used to be a pleasure house, a hot spring, a theatre, private rooms, and on one of its floors there is a kitchen, and in the room beyond the kitchen the aristocracy of Hallownest are still sitting at their dining tables, dead, where they were when it happened. Further back there is a bug called Poggy, sitting among a small pile of other bugs who look a great deal like him, with flies hovering over the flesh. Nothing in that world says a word about it. It simply lets you walk into that room. On the stage of that same building there is a ghost. She was a singer, celebrated once, and she died there. Her spirit still stands on the boards performing to an empty house. When you sit down and listen to her, and you have to use the dream blade to hear her at all, she is not frightened or vengeful. She is grateful. Even if only you, she says, it's a wonderful thing to have an audience again. In life, what happened to her was much quieter than a murder. Huge crowds once flocked to hear me sing, she says. Then something changed. The audience, once so enwrapped, began to leave. She was not killed by the plague. She was abandoned by it, slowly, one empty seat at a time, and then she died of being unattended. There is also a bank in that city, and the bank is a scam. A cheerful creature in a booth offers to hold your money for you, for a small opening fee, because losing one's savings is a terrible thing, and so much more likely if you carry it about on yourself. She is warm and reasonable, and she is lying. Once she is holding enough of your money, you rest at a bench and come back, and the booth is gone. And when you look properly at what is left, the booth was a flat cutout the whole time, a painted board. There was never a bank. You can find her afterwards relaxing in the hot spring, under a new name. She explains, without embarrassment, that the cost of running a bank can be high, and so she had to charge a somewhat large service fee. You can hit her. Money falls out of her shell each time. You can get back more than you deposited. And then she just stays there, in the water, forever, taking it. In the same city there is a smith who has spent his whole life on one problem. He survived the fall of the kingdom by not paying attention to it. He says as much. He hardly noticed the great nights. He hardly noticed anything, because he was working. Bring him rare, pale ore, and he sharpens your nail 4 times, each one better than the last. And when he finishes the 4th, the pure nail, the best blade he will ever make, his life ends. Not metaphorically. He walks outside, stands in the rain, and asks you to use it on him. With a pure nail forged, he says, "My work in this lifetime comes to an end. I beg you, cut me down." You can do it. There is an achievement for it, and it is called purity. Or you can refuse and walk away, and later find him living in a hut in the green with one of the old nail masters, modelling for paintings, carving little wooden figures, helping to sculpt statues of the 5 great knights. That achievement is called happy couple. You only get one of those per save. The story makes you choose which version of that man exists. Higher in the city there is a tower belonging to a scholar order, and it is the most straightforwardly evil place in that kingdom. They studied soul, the pale light every living thing carries, the stuff you spend on healing. When the plague came, their leader decided soul was the cure and started extracting it from bugs in quantity. The corpses were dumped at the bottom of the tower, and they are still there. Their tablets are written in the calmest possible language. The mind still limits us so, one says. How to break past its constraints, and then spare thought for those consumed. Through their grace we are evolved. No plague of mind shall overcome us now. Those experiments produce 2 kinds of leftovers. There are the failures, deformed, half-melted things wandering the halls. And there are the scholars who used the harvested soul on themselves and lost their own memories doing it. When you read one of those, you get a bug trying to work out whose life it is living. This soul, it thinks, is it my own? This power, what did it cost? These skills, no training I recall. Their leader chased what he thought was a light guiding him toward immortality. It was his own infected mind, and in the dream version of that fight, once you have beaten him, the whole thing collapses into a tantrum. "You promised I would live forever," he says. That voice, was it never there? And then, finally, the part that gives it away. "Now the king and his kingdom are dead, but I will live forever." Elsewhere in the city there is a spire with a telescope in it, belonging to the man who watched over the whole district. He gave himself up willingly. He is one of 3 who agreed to sleep forever so that a seal would hold. His last written words are the sort of thing a decent administrator writes. "Though my gaze shall no longer fall upon this city, I will act forever in its protection. For king, for bug, for Hallowest, I head now to my rest." His guards are still at their posts outside his chamber, and they are dead. That is not an exaggeration. The armored sentinels you fight there are empty shells with swarms of infected flies inside them, physically crawling around in the armor and moving it. The journal notes it plainly, and then the hunter's own note underneath is the one that stays with people. When these silent warriors fall in battle, their bodies split open and strange bugs come flying out. I wonder, what will come flying out of me when I die? And the man they are guarding does not want to be woken. Of the 3 sleepers, he is the one who believes the seal must hold. When you reach into his dream, all he says is that bonds must remain, over and over, and then you kill him anyway, because there is no other way forward. Below the city there are sewers, built to carry the waste of the district above, and there is a knight living in them. His name is Ogrim, and he was one of the 5 great knights of Hallowest, and he now lives voluntarily in sewage. He survived. That is his problem. Everyone he served with is dead, the king is gone, the kingdom is a corpse, and he exiled himself down here rather than look at any of it. He rolls dung. He sculpts statues out of it, statues of his king, and of the 4 companions he lost, and he stands in front of them and believes, sincerely, that Hallownest can be reborn. When he fights you, it is because he mistakes you for one of the infected, and when he loses, he apologizes and compliments your honor. He is also guarding a door. Behind that door is a grove belonging to another of the 5 knights, a woman called Isma. He swore an oath never to enter it. He says so, sadly, in passing. I swore I'd visit, he says, but my duties, my oath. She is dead in there. Her body is fused into the wall, grown over. She has been dead the entire time he has been standing outside, not going in. And when you read her final thought, it is addressed to him. Ogrim, she thinks, there's no time. He never learns. He is still down there at the very end, rolling dung and talking about the king coming back. If you fight the dream version of him, a younger, stronger Ogrim from the kingdom's golden age, he does something in between attacks that is hard to watch. He names them. Hegemol, he says, I miss your humor. Zama, I miss your stories. Drya, I miss your wisdom. Isma, I miss you. And his private thought, if you catch it, is not about the king or the plague at all. Where will the line of Hallownest's great knights end? He wonders. With me, he is right, it does. Deeper in the waterways, there is a creature who is a mother and nothing else. She is enormous and immobile, fused into the wall of her chamber, and her body doubles as a nest for her own young, who are developing inside her. The plague has taken whatever mind she had and left the breeding. She cannot leave. Her biology has trapped her in that room as surely as any cage. When you kill her, the infection inside her bursts outward and takes her body apart. There is a charm you can pick up, which is, quite literally, one of her unborn children. The description calls it a living charm born in the gut of a fluke marm, and what it does is turn one of your spells into a swarm of her babies, which you throw at things. That is not the only charm like that. There is one found on the corpse of a giant mother in a hidden tunnel, and the description is the bluntest sentence in the whole game. It drains the soul of its bearer and uses it to birth hatchlings. The hatchlings have no desire to eat or live, and will sacrifice themselves to protect their parent. There is one made of the nails of fallen warriors, fused together. There is one found on an anvil in front of a dead smith at the edge of the world, made of imperfect discarded blades that have melted into one another. And the description says the nails still long to be wielded. There is one that turns your shadow into a weapon, and the text calls it a forbidden spell, and for a single frame when you use it, your body becomes a 6-eyed thing made of darkness. And there is one found in a tomb beside a dead shaman, described as a forgotten artifact used to draw soul from still living creatures. Somebody was buried with it. Now let us go up into the mountain of crystal. It is beautiful up there, pink and violet light, singing stone, enormous crystal formations that glow in the dark, and it is full of miners who are still working. They are dead, every one of them. The plague reanimated them, and whatever purpose they had in life was imprinted so deeply that they carry on swinging their picks at the rock forever, without minds, in a mine that will never be finished. There is a line about this from that wandering scholar, and it is the gentlest possible phrasing of a horrifying thing. Did it sadden you, he asks, to see those miners below, still laboring at their endless task, even overcome? Strong purpose has been imprinted upon their husks. There is one guardian in that mountain who is not quite gone. He was a miner too. The crystal has grown through him, across his back, up his arms, over his head, and he shoots light out of his limbs and screams. The journal note asks a question rather than describing him. How does the world look to this creature, gazing out from within its crystal prison? Does it see only light? Is that what drives it into a frenzy? And when you read him, there is somebody in there, tired, he thinks. So long, my light, my rest. There is one other thing about him worth knowing. While the crystal covers him, he shrieks in a way that sounds unmistakably like the light goddess at the center of the whole story. Break the crystal off, and he goes back to making ordinary insect noises. And at the bottom of that mountain, in a little dugout alcove, there is a girl with a pickaxe who is singing. Her name is Myla, and she is the reason a great many people cannot talk about this game calmly. She is cheerful. She is a bit shy. She stammers slightly. She is digging for treasure, and she is enjoying it. This is hard work, she says, but I don't mind. Down here I can keep working without even sleeping. It's fun. And she has made up a song to sing while she works. Bury my mother, the song goes, pale and slight. Bury my father with his hands so tight. Bury my sister, she'll trouble you no more. And bury my brother with his shell all torn. She sings that cheerfully, in a friendly voice, to a stranger in a hole in the ground. She does not appear to have registered what it is. And then she begins to go. It happens gradually, in stages, tied to your progress. Early on she is herself. Later her dialogue starts to curdle. She talks about the singing in the walls, about how it gets louder, about how she cannot quite stop listening to it. If you read her mind at that stage, you do not get Myla. You get the other voice, giving instructions. How much longer, it says. Kill it. How much longer? Kill the empty one. She is being told to kill you by something inside her head while she is still talking to you politely. And after a certain point she is gone completely. What is standing in that alcove is a husk with a pick, and it attacks you, and it counts as an ordinary enemy in the bestiary. You have to deal with her. That is the part people struggle with. There is no cure, no side quest, no item that saves her. And even then, even after she has fully turned, if you strike her with the dream blade, fragments of her song still come out. The people who made it were asked about this and gave the most infuriating possible answer, which was that if you simply never engage with her, there is always the chance of a happy ending, right? Let us go somewhere quieter. There is a region called the Resting Grounds, and it is where Hallownest buried its dead. It sits directly under the lake that makes the city rain, so that the water passes through the graveyard on its way down. The last member of an entire tribe lives there, tending the graves. She is a moth, and her people were the ones who made all of this happen. Before the kingdom, before the Pale King, there was a light, and the moths came out of it and worshipped it. And then a new god arrived and gave them minds that could think for themselves, and they walked away from the old one. She does not soften it. They forsook the light that spawned them, she says, turned their backs to it, forgot it even, and so this kingdom was born from that betrayal. She is not there out of piety. She is there as punishment, tending these graves and guiding the wielder, she says, all penitence for old crimes. And when you finally bring her enough of the substance she has been asking for, the pale drifting stuff that dreams are made of, she does not celebrate. she dissolves, and her last request is the opposite of what anyone else in that kingdom asks for. "Don't remember us," she says. "Don't honor us. We do not deserve it." There is a lake above that graveyard, enormous and dark and completely still, and if you find your way to the shore of it late enough, there is somebody sitting there. He has been in the story since the beginning. He is a traveler in a small mask, endlessly curious, unfailingly kind, and he turns up all over the kingdom, at benches, at windows, in a hot spring, standing at the top of the crystal mountain looking down at the town. Everywhere he goes, he is circling the same question, which is where the rain in the city comes from. He does not know why he came back to this kingdom. He remembers almost nothing of the first time he was here. That is not amnesia by accident. He was the assistant of one of the three sleepers, the scholar, and when she sealed herself away, she put a protection on herself and gave him a mask to carry as part of it, and the act of doing that stripped his memories out. He has spent the whole game walking around a country he used to live in, unable to recall any of it, enjoying himself enormously. When you reach her chamber, he is there, and he explains what he is, and he takes off the mask so that you can go in and kill her, and he tells you not to hesitate. Mercy is a fine thing, he says, but you and her agree this must be done. And afterwards he goes to the lake, because the lake is the answer to his question, and he sits down. "Here at last," he says, "I feel at peace. Twice I've seen this world, and though my service may have stripped the first experience from me, I'm thankful I could witness its beauty again." Then he is not there anymore. His nail is planted in the ground beside the water, and that is all. The achievement for that moment is called witness. His private thought, much earlier, before any of that, to live an age, he thinks, yet remember so little. Perhaps I should be thankful. All tragedy erased, I see only wonders. Scattered through that kingdom there are corpses you can touch with the dream blade, and each one wakes up and fights you, and each one is a small private story the main plot never mentions. There is a warrior in a tomb whose inscription reads that cursed are those who turn against the king. He raised his weapon against the throne during the crisis and was executed for it. When you beat him, he does not defend himself. "Do not call me a traitor," he says. "Simply call me a fool." Off in a corner, there is a moth hermit at the edge of the world who died alone in a place nobody visits. He greets you with the line, "You have come a long way just to die here at the edge of the world." And then, after you beat him, he notices something. "I can see myself there," he says, "still sleeping. How long have I been hidden here?" He had not realized he was dead. Hidden away, there is a warrior in the deep nest with exactly the same problem and none of the awareness. He introduces himself with enormous pride as the strongest warrior in Hallow Nest. He is standing next to his own body and thinks it belongs to somebody else. After you beat him, he is delighted about it. "Unbelievable," he says, "I am defeated at last," and then asks you to tell the king about his valor when you see him. The king has been gone for a very long time. There is a guardian in the gardens who died waiting. She is small and round and cheerful, and she wants to sleep a little, because the queen will be here soon, and there were flying lessons promised. "Wake me when the queen arrives, stranger." The queen is not coming. The queen has bound herself into her own dwelling on the other side of the garden and cannot move. There is a self-important thing on the cliffs who claims to be a great mind and then dissolves into babble. Bow, bow, bow to Gorb. Ascend, ascend. and whose entire tragedy is that there is nothing underneath the announcement. And there is one in a stone sanctuary near the graveyard whose story is the worst of them. She was infected, and she worked out what the dreams were doing to people, and she found a solution. Her solution was eyes. She took her own out first, then she took other people's. She has a line she repeats while you fight her, in a soft voice, and it is one of the most upsetting things in Hallownest because of how gentle it sounds. Can't sleep with your eyes open, little one. Can't dream if you're still breathing, little one. And when she is finished, she explains herself, and she is not raving. One by one, she says, their eyes closed at last. A place where light cannot haunt us, a place without dreams, please. That was her cure. That was, in her mind, mercy. Now let us go down into the dark, into the region everybody who has played this game remembers being frightened of. Deep Nest is where the lights stop working. Whole rooms are unlit. The floor moves. Things that look like scenery unfold and come at you, and the rest of the kingdom regards the place as border territory, to be contained rather than governed. There is a tablet at the boundary that describes its rulers in the coldest possible terms. Their dead sire, once of honoured caste, their sealed mother, but the common beast. No peace with them we make. The queen down there was called Hera, and her story is the transaction at the centre of the whole game. She never accepted the king's rule, and when he came to her needing a third sleeper for his seal, she named a price, and the price was a child. He agreed. She bore a daughter. Conception was, for her kind, close to impossible, which makes that daughter rarer than anyone says out loud. And then, having got what she bargained for, she went into her eternal sleep with almost no time spent with her. Her thought, if you reach into it, is 4 fragments long, bound, for brood, for child, fair bargain made, give all, for her. Her daughter grew up in that dark, armed and quick, and entirely alone, and became the only person in the story actively trying to hold the kingdom together. She fights you twice before she decides you are useful. And when you finally kill her mother, because that is what breaking the seal means, she is standing at the bedside. We do not choose our mothers, she says, or the circumstance into which we are born. It's quite a debt I owed. Only in allowing her to pass can I begin to repay it. If you catch her private thought in that room, it is worse. Mother, she thinks, forgive my inaction, but another path may be possible. She knows what she is letting happen. She lets it happen anyway. There were weavers in that region once, and they left. They were outsiders who settled there, and when the plague came, they packed up and went back to wherever they had come from. What they left behind is a charm, a silken thing described as containing a song of farewell, left by the weavers who departed Hallownest for their old home. It summons little creatures to keep a lonely bearer company. An entire people left a goodbye note in the form of a toy. There is a midwife still down there who remembers them, and she is bitter about it in an offhand way. Amazing things the weavers once crafted on their looms, she says. Stories, shields, spells. So much of our history was spun upon their spools. She is also the only character in that world who is not an enemy and can still hurt you, and if you try to read her mind, she reacts like somebody being grabbed. Gah, get out, get out, get out. Somewhere in that darkness, there is a thing that wears faces. It lives in a lair hung with the corpses of everything it has already caught, suspended from the ceiling, and it hunts by mimicking shapes pulled out of its victims' memories. usually somebody they loved. The journal entry for it is not a description at all. It is a warning written directly to you. In the deepest darkness, it says, "There are beasts who wear faces stolen from your memories and pluck at the strings in your heart. Know yourself and stay strong." The first time you meet it, the shape it has chosen is you. There is a mask maker in that region, sitting in a workshop full of masks, and their whole trade is providing faces for the faceless. A wonderful thing to have, a face, they say, not a thing with which we all are blessed. None of the masks in that shop match any creature you ever meet down there. They also know things they should not know. They know about the discarded bodies sealed away at the bottom of the world. They know what you actually are underneath. And they explain, in passing, how the masks work, and it is not a comforting explanation. The original mind is destroyed, they say, though those of striking will may retain a sliver. If you knock their own mask off, there is a grey face underneath, with eyes that swirl and move, and they look at it and ask, without any particular alarm, another mask. There is a failed railway down there too. The king tried to build a tram line through Deep Nest, and the region refused it. The corpses of the work crew are still lying along the route, and what is left in their heads are two thoughts. It couldn't be built. This nest rejects us. Now let us go up into the gardens, which are pretty, and which are one of the more quietly awful places in that kingdom. They were built as a private retreat for the queen, and she is still in them, and she cannot leave. That is her own doing. Do I seem prisoner here? She asks. If so, it's not by any choice but my own. These bindings about me, I've chosen to erect. She grew herself into her own dwelling deliberately, and she says why with a candor that is hard to sit with, because she still feels the urge. A voracious desire, she calls it, to spread seeds upon the land, to propagate myself, to breed. She stopped herself the only way she knew how, because of what happened the last time. And there is one line she says about her part in it that lands harder than anything the king ever wrote down. There is some shame I feel from my own part in the deed, she says, and this method guarantees its cease. Her bodyguard is dead a few rooms away. Dryar was one of the 5 great knights, and she died defending those gardens from the exiled Mantis and his followers. Her corpse is surrounded by a heap of the ones she took with her, which tells you how it went. She has exactly one word left in her, and it is protect. The queen does not know. Her eyesight has gone, and she is bound in place, and she talks about Dryar as though she were still out there somewhere. And in that same garden there is a grave with a delicate flower quest attached to it, and it is the best known piece of misery in that world for good reason. In the graveyard region, there is a grey figure in a ruined mansion, and she is dying. Her name is Zama, and she is the 5th of the great knights, and she came to Hallownest from somewhere else, from lands serene, she says, where a particular kind of flower grows. She loved the traitor Mantis's daughter. The tribe rejected it because she was an outsider. Her lover died a long time ago and is buried in those gardens under 4 words about being the traitor's child. She asks you to carry one of those flowers to the grave. It is the most fragile object in Hallownest. It withers if you take a single point of damage. It withers if you use the fast travel. There is one safe route, and it is long, and you have to cross most of a hostile kingdom without being touched. The old stag, when he sees you carrying it, says something about it in passing. That flower you're carrying, he says, it looks quite beautiful, but also very delicate. If you get it there, new flowers grow around the grave, and the achievement is called solace. And when you go back to tell her, she does not thank you and she does not celebrate. She simply stops existing. There is a mask shard on the ground where she was. Her dialogue before that is the sound of somebody who has not managed a complete sentence in years. Nails and claws. Why must it be so? And afterwards, there is one last fragment, almost a question. Such grief can end? Che can end? There is a preacher in those gardens too, standing in a small chapel with a congregation of moss creatures gathered around. And what it preaches is that everybody has got this wrong. To stifle that light is to suppress nature, it says. Nature suppressed distorts, plagues us. Its argument is that the kingdom should have joined with the light rather than fighting it, and that all the horror is the result of resisting. Then, at a certain point, you come back, and the preacher and its entire congregation are dead in that chapel, taken by the exact thing they were preaching toward. While it was alive, its private thought was blinding, rising, never be empty. Afterwards, from the corpse, there are two words, blazing, bright. Let us go to the edge of the world where the ash falls. There is a whole region out past the eastern border where grey flakes drift down constantly, and it looks like snow, and it is not. There is an enormous ribbed shell out there, a hollow cavern the size of a valley, with a pale egg inside it, and it is a body. It belonged to the king. Before he was a small pale figure standing among ordinary bugs, he was something vast, and he crossed a wasteland and stopped there and shed himself. The falling ash is that corpse decaying. It has been coming down on that region for a very long time. There is an old creature living up on a ledge out there who explains it in about 9 words, and who is one of the few characters with any real perspective at all. This ashen place is grave of worm, he says. Once told, it came to die. And then, about the ash, this falling ash is molt, the worm's corpse decaying. He is also actively resisting the plague, on purpose, by will. I resist the light's allure, he says. Union it may offer, but also a mind bereft of thought. He is very firm that he is not a worm himself. Too small, he says, too many limbs. He then proceeds to know a great deal more about worms than anybody else you meet. And if you try to read his mind, he is annoyed about it. One prefers its mind not be pried, he says, is rather unsettling. There is a nail master living out there too, alone, at the far end of everything, and his story is one of 3. 3 of them trained together under the same teacher and now live as far apart as the map allows. One is at the top of the world on the cliffs, one is in the green with his paintings, one is out in the ash. They are estranged, and none of them will explain why. The one in the ash mentions the one on the cliffs and tells you to pass on that he will be waiting a while longer before he gets what he wants. The one on the cliffs says he has not forgotten what he is owed and never will. Neither will say what the debt is. And then you read their minds. The one in the ash is longing for it to end. Brother Matto, he thinks, in your lonely home at the top of the world, do you still think of me as an enemy? In the future, if you will listen, I will tell you why I chose to tread this path. The one on the cliffs is not thinking about him at all. He is thinking about the third one, the one who quit. My brother, Sheo, he thinks. How fare you in that green kingdom of thorns you call home? 3 old friends, decades of silence, each one privately missing somebody, none of them willing to be the first to say it. Nothing ever resolves it or explains what happened. It just lets you stand there, holding all three halves of a conversation that will not happen. There is also, out in that ash, a corpse by an acid pool belonging to a bug who talked a very big game. He was an adventurer called Tiso, and he turned up all over the map telling you how dangerous he was. He had a shield with a deadly surprise concealed inside it, and he mentioned that surprise several times, and he never once demonstrated it, because he never fights you at all. He went into the fighting pits and did not come out. Whatever killed him dumped him out there. And his final thought, sitting on that corpse, is two words with a question mark. Why? There is one other wanderer with a similar arc who does much better. Her name is Cloth, and she is a cicada, loud and brave, and honestly a bit of a coward underneath, and she is looking for a death worth having. You meet her a few times. In the gardens she squares up to face the exiled Mantis and his followers, and her private thought is not about glory. It's time, she thinks. I'll face that fear. Nola will be proud. Nobody ever tells you who Nola is. She fights beside you against him, and she is mortally wounded, and she lands the killing blow herself before she goes down, and afterwards her ghost is standing above her own body, thoroughly pleased. Well now, she says, that was something, a true battle of mighty warriors, so intense, so climactic. She is the only character in the entire game who gets exactly the ending she wanted. Now we go down, past all of it, to the bottom. There is a region at the lowest point of the map called the Ancient Basin, and it is the emptiest place in Hallownest. Grey stone, broken pillars, almost nothing alive. It sits on foundations older than the kingdom. The descriptions talk about impossibly old structures and roads formed as though the rock itself possessed a will. It is also where the king's failures were left. In a windswept cave in that basin there is a body. It is small and pale, and it has two horns, and it looks almost exactly like you. It is a vessel, one of the ones that did not work. It died down there before it was ever used for anything, and afterwards parasites got into the shell and stood it up again. And what walks around that cave now is a corpse being puppeted by the plague. The journal is 4 words: shattered corpse, reanimated by infected parasites. The thing that screams out of it does not use its own voice. It uses the light goddesses. And when you finally put it down, the spirit that comes out of the shell does not attack or flee. It reaches out toward you once and then collapses. Its dream version is described as a lost god of the abyss, and unlike every other dream jewel in that world, it never says a single word. It simply bows and goes. Below that basin, there is a sealed door, and beyond the door, there is a hole with no floor. That is the abyss, and it is where you came from. The bottom of it is not stone, it is shells, small pale masks with 2 horns, the same shape as your own face, piled in drifts deep enough to walk on and banked up the walls like snow. There are thousands. Nobody has ever given a number. They were made down there deliberately, out of 3 things: a king, a queen, and the darkness at the bottom of the world, with a specification 4 lines long. No mind to think, no will to break, no voice to cry suffering, born of God and void. The idea was a container for a god of light, and a container for a god of light cannot want anything, because anything with wants can be talked into opening itself. So they needed something genuinely empty, and there was no way to test for it in advance, and the only test available was the climb. The ones that reached the top were candidates. The ones that did not stayed. Some of them are still moving. Little dark drifting shapes that come toward you when you get near, and the record kept on them is 4 words long. Fragment of a lingering will. They cannot be read. The blade that hears the last thought of statues and corpses and gods gets nothing out of them at all. There is an altar down there surrounded by carved, screaming faces, and if you use a certain spell while standing on it, the faces take it up and hand it back to you stronger and darker. Afterwards, if you read them, they are all saying the same thing. Our voices will cry out again. They were built with no voice on purpose. That is the one place in the world where the specification fails. There is also a lighthouse on the shore of that Black Sea. Somebody carried the stone down there and raised it and installed a lamp and pointed it out across an ocean nobody has ever crossed. Nobody has ever said who or when or why. And when the king was finished with that place, he sealed the door and put a tablet beside it. And the tablet is the most callous thing anybody writes down in that entire game. Our pure vessel has ascended, it says. Beyond lies only the refuse and regret of its creation. Refuse and regret. That is the official description of his children. The one that worked was taken out, and raised and armored and trained. The record on it is 6 words: chosen vessel, raised and trained to prime form. It reads like a label on a component, which is exactly what it was meant to be. And it failed anyway, and it failed for the softest possible reason. Something got into it, not the goddess, something smaller. Somewhere in all that raising, the empty thing picked up an attachment. The reading the story supports is that what ruined the perfect container was the king himself, or the idea of him, or the simple fact that somebody had bothered to raise it and it had noticed. That was enough. A hairline of self inside a thing that was supposed to have none, and a God who works through minds only needs a mind. When you finally reach it, chained in a temple in the middle of the kingdom, the thing in front of you is enormous and cracked and leaking orange light, and between its attacks it stops and turns its own nail on itself. Not on you, on its own body, repeatedly, deliberately, hard. Nothing ever explains that. The reading almost everybody arrives at is that there is something still in there that understands what is happening and is trying, in the only way left, to stop it, which would mean the whole plan failed because the vessel was not empty enough to be ajar and was just full enough to try. There is a version of that same creature you can fight elsewhere, in a place made of dreams, clean, silver, undamaged, moving at a speed the broken one cannot manage. It was never given anything to say, but there are lines in the files that were written for it and cut before release, and the people who made it have confirmed they never went in. Do not think, do not speak, do not hope, do not. That is what was in the perfect vessel's head. Not a thought, an instruction to stop having them. The king's own house is a dream now. The whole palace vanished when he did. There were no signs of conflict around the area, one scholar says. It's as though the whole place just vanished, and the only way in is through the memory of it. It is white and delicate and beautiful, and every corridor in it is a hazard. Saw blades, spikes on timers, rooms that flip. It is a home built like a machine, and nobody has ever settled whether he was defending it or testing something. There is a corridor at the bottom of it, that nothing tells you exists, behind a wall you have to know about, and it is the hardest thing in the entire game by a wide margin. The tablet at its entrance says that to witness secrets sealed, one must endure the harshest punishment. At the end of it, there is a short scene of the king with a very small vessel, and that is the reward. A few seconds of a man and the child he was going to seal into a temple. He is on his throne, dead, or near enough that the difference does not matter. He does not speak. He does not react. He has half a charm on him, and when you strike him it falls off. That charm is the two of them together, a holy thing symbolizing a union between higher beings, with the queen carrying the other half in her garden. Put the pieces together, wear it, and go down to the bottom of the abyss, and a wall opens. The room past it is small and still and almost clean, and there is a black egg in the middle of it with your reflection in it. Touching it with the dream blade shows you the memory and the 4 lines, and then the charm you were wearing is gone, and something else has replaced it that you cannot take off. An emptiness that was hidden within. It says, now unconstrained, unifies the void under the bearer's will. Everything changes quietly after that. The lashing things in the Black Sea sink and go still. The little shapes on the floor stop drifting toward you and curl up instead, and die from a touch, and give you nothing, because there is nothing left to take. They are not being defeated, they are being gathered. 3 people are asleep across that kingdom, holding a seal shut, and to finish the story, you have to end all 3 of them. One of them wants it. She is the scholar, and she thinks the seal is a way of freezing the world in place forever, and she is against it. A world forever unchanging, she thinks. Better, an end. One of them does not. He is the watcher in his spire, and all he thinks is that bonds must remain. And one of them made a deal. She is the Spider Queen, and she gave up everything she had left for a daughter she barely got to meet, and her daughter is standing beside the bed when you do it. None of them fight back. They are asleep. You reach into their dreams and end them, one at a time, in the order you choose, and it is never once framed as heroism. And then there are the endings, and there are more of them than most people realize. If you never went back down to the abyss, you fight the thing in the temple, and the light comes out of it and goes into you instead, and the temple seals with you inside it. That is the ending the king designed for. It is a repair, not a cure, and the exact same failure will happen again eventually, with nobody left to fight it. If you carry the emptiness, the daughter comes. She arrives in the middle of that fight, without warning, and throws herself onto the enormous broken thing and binds it and holds it. She is a fraction of its size, and what happens next depends on whether you are quick, hesitate, and it breaks free and puts her down, and the 2 of you are sealed in there together with the goddess. That ending is called sealed siblings, and it is the loneliest thing in that world. Be quick, though, and reach for the dream blade instead of the sharp one, and you go through the wall entirely, into the goddess's own dream, where she has been since she was forgotten. She never speaks in sentences. She fights in light, and the closest thing to a statement anybody gets out of her arrives when the floor opens and the darkness comes up and takes hold of her. 2 words, ancient enemy. She knew what it was. She had known for longer than the kingdom existed. The plague goes out of the world with her. The bodies stop moving. The temple simply is not there anymore, and your own shell cracks apart in the last few seconds, and what was inside it is not held anymore, and the reading almost everybody comes to is that it went back down to the sea it was drawn out of. The daughter is left standing outside in the dust, looking at a patch of ground where a temple used to be, with nothing left to protect and nobody left to protect it from. That is the closest thing to a good ending available. There is one more, and it is stranger than all of them, and it involves a woman lying unconscious in a rubbish pit. She comes from a tribe whose gods left them. Gods of thunder, gods of rain, she calls out. Why forsake thy servants? Their answer to abandonment was to go looking for replacements, and their method of looking is combat. Through ritual combat, she says, are we attuned to the voices of the gods. Her body is in the pit. Her mind is a place, an enormous pale hall where every powerful thing that ever lived in that kingdom can be summoned and fought again, in sequence, without rest. And there is a room in that hall that unlocks eventually, and inside it there are the corpses of two enormous dead gods, surrounded by the masks of the god-seekers who came before her. Somebody already tried this. It did not go well for them. She is repeating it and does not appear to know. At the top of the longest sequence, there is a version of the goddess of light that never existed anywhere else. The undiminished one, the perfect form, fought on small platforms hovering directly over the black. And when she loses, your shell splits open, and what comes out of it has too many eyes and too many arms and destroys her without help. Then it comes down over that pale hall, and the darkness fills the whole place, and tendrils rise around the sleeping woman on her throne while she watches. She has been looking for something worth the name God her entire life. She gives the title to the thing rising out of a broken shell. Unless you are carrying a flower, not a weapon, a flower, the same fragile thing grown by a dying woman in a ruined mansion for a grave in a garden. Carry one all the way there, and at the very end, when the darkness comes down and reaches for her, a small white light comes off it and pushes the whole thing back, and the two of them are simply not there anymore. Nobody explains where they went. The most powerful entity in that world is turned aside by a plant somebody asked you to deliver. There is a whole other story bolted onto that kingdom, and it arrives like a circus. If you find a certain lantern and light it, a troop comes to town. Red tents in the snow outside a mostly empty village. Their master is elegant and theatrical, and calls you friend, and he asks you to help with a ritual. The ritual is this: there is a child, a small living flame you wear as a charm, and it must be fed. Across the kingdom, there are members of the troop carrying flames of nightmare, and you hunt them and take what they are carrying and give it to the child, and the child grows. And what the child is being grown for is stated plainly in a journal entry about one of those flame carriers in 4 words: burn the father, feed the child. The master of that troop is going to be killed at the end of the ritual, so that the heart behind him can be reborn in the thing you have been raising. He knows. He has done this before, in other kingdoms, and will do it again in others afterwards. Across these lands my kin now spread, he says. He asks you, at one point, whether you will continue to harvest the flame even now that you surely see the path it illuminates. One member of that troop has had enough. He is a large, sad musician who calls the whole thing what it is. A song that never ends, he says, is no song at all. Endless, repeating songs of sacrifice, of servitude, and what he thinks privately is not about escape for himself. Master, he wonders, are even you a slave? If so, let our chains be broken together. He offers you a way out. You can go with him and destroy the lantern and send the troop away without completing the ritual. And if you do, he holds nothing against you either way. As long as you do it without regret, he says, I will bear you no hatred. And if you take that route, something happens to him that is worse than anything the ritual would have done. He forgets. Completely. The next time you see him, he is a small round bug sitting on a bench in the town with a different name, no mask, none of his old bulk, and no idea who he ever was. Why did I choose to travel here, he wonders, and how far must I have come to forget the origin entirely? Something still moves in him faintly when he is near objects from his old life. A strange sense remains, he says, fear, but also longing. He cannot place it, and he is happy. That is the part that unsettles people. Being in this town, he says, beside such good company as yourself, I feel remarkably, refreshingly content. An entire person was erased, and the leftover is at peace about it, because there is nothing left in him that knows there was anything to mourn. There is a fighting arena in that kingdom, carved out of the shell of a massive ancient bug, and it is still running. The bug in charge of it is a small enthusiastic manager who inherited the job. His predecessor is still sitting on the throne overlooking the arena, dead, and nobody has moved him. The place goes on operating around the corpse. They breed creatures specifically for the fights, and the bodies of the losers go into a chasm below. The kingdom above has collapsed. Everyone in it is dead or infected or hiding, and this one business is still taking entrance, still running its 3 tiers of trials, still throwing corpses down the hole, entirely undisturbed by any of it. There is a hive not far from there, and its story is a slow suffocation. Its queen grew so large over the years that she could no longer leave her own domain. She kept the place walled off from the kingdom deliberately, though this hive exists within Hallownest. One of the tablets says, we play no part in its attempt at perpetuation. She is dead now, and her guard is still there. He was born into that duty. That is not a figure of speech. The journal note about his kind says it directly. Some creatures are born with duties and loyalties marked indelibly upon their minds. They are strong, but they are also slaves. He fights you to protect a corpse, because that is what he was made to do, and there was never a version of him that could choose otherwise. And when you beat him, he kneels down in front of her body. Her spirit, afterwards, is not angry with you. She is relieved on his behalf. He was finally freed, is the sense of it, from his binding to the hive. Killing him was the only way anybody was ever going to let him stop. Let us come back up to the surface for a moment, because there are 2 more small ones I do not want to skip. There is a bug down there whose entire existence is maintaining signposts. He belongs to a guild of sign menders. He hurries around fixing things, and if you get near him, he runs away, because he has 1 point of health and no interest in fighting anybody. He is technically listed as an enemy, and he is worth nothing at all. He also keeps a diary, and the diary is the most ordinary and most human document in the whole kingdom. He loves fixing the sign by the well. He is looking forward to a gathering with the other menders. He has a crush on a colleague, and he is thinking about doing something about it, and about sharing his life with her. If you chase him down and kill him, which takes deliberate effort because he flees, his house becomes accessible. and the sign he spent his entire existence maintaining stays broken for good. There is a map maker who wanders the whole kingdom drawing it, one room ahead of you, humming to himself, leaving apologetic notes when you miss him. He goes almost everywhere. He is cheerful about places that would frighten anyone. His wife runs the shop above and sells the maps he sends up. She was a fighter once and gave it up for this. She worries about him constantly and says so. At times my husband makes Hallownest sound a wonder, she says, but sometimes it seems a ghastly, dangerous place. He keeps asking her to come with him. She keeps declining and thinking about it. And when every map is finished, he stops. You find him permanently asleep in a bed at the back of her shop, done, with nothing left to draw. His private thought, at the height of it, is the loneliest happy thought in Hallownest. To chart the world, he thinks. What joy! If only Iselda could share the thrill. Neither of them is unhappy. They are one of the only genuinely warm things in that entire world, and the reason it lands so strangely is that everybody around them is dead. There is one more traveller worth mentioning, and he outlives all of it. He is a mushroom, and he only turns up after all three sleepers are dead, and he speaks a language you cannot understand unless you are carrying a piece of living fungus in your chest. He wanders between 7 fixed spots across the whole kingdom, and what he talks about is time. Worms who pull bugs into their thrall, he says, till ages pass and kingdoms fall. And then, about himself, caps and shells may fall to dust, but Mr. Mushroom readjusts. When you finally catch him at the very first place you ever walked through, he acknowledges you for the only time. "So you've been following me around then," he says. "I hope my travels haven't confused your own." And then he leaves. Now, with my duties here finished, it's time I made graceful departure. He is one of the only characters who appears to simply outlast the whole thing. There is a stag beetle who carries you between stations, and he is the last of his kind. His species used to run the whole transport network of the kingdom. Now there is one, old and stiff, who comes whenever a station bell rings, because the sound will always call him back. Each station you reopen gives him back a little of his memory. As I visit more places, he says, I feel my memories returning to me, like the stagways of my mind are running once more. He has strong opinions about the king's mechanical tram. The thought a mere machine could attempt what we stags do, he says. Foolish, very foolish. And when you have opened every station, one more opens that is not a station. It is a nest on the cliffs, where his kind lived and hatched, and where they are. There are stag corpses in there, broken eggshells, nothing living. He grieves, and then decides to hope that some of them got out beyond the borders, and his title quietly changes afterwards from the last stag to the old stag. That is the entire acknowledgement. And his private thought, at the end of it, is the one I always come back to. I tire so easily now, he thinks, and my old legs seem to ache more and more. Still, I'm lucky to grow old at all. So many others haven't. Let me tell you about some of the objects in that world, because a surprising number of them are made of somebody. Your health is measured in masks, and you extend it by finding shards, broken pieces of pale material scattered across the kingdom, 4 to a mask. Your capacity for soul is extended by fragments, 3 to a vessel. Both of those are exactly what the words say. The little row of white circles at the top of the screen is masks, the same kind lying in drifts at the bottom of the world. The thing that holds your magic is called a vessel, because that is what it is. So the entire process of getting stronger is a small hollow shell, walking around a dead kingdom, picking up broken pieces of its own kind and adding them to itself. Nobody ever mentions it. The relics you sell to the historian are similarly grim once you look. The journals are stone tablets found beside the bodies of the travelers who wrote them, in a dialect nobody can read properly anymore, and the scholar who buys them says they paint a morbid tale. The idols are personal religious icons of a king who was almost never seen in the flesh, each one individually engraved, tailored to whoever owned it. There is a charm found in the very first area you walk through, before you have met anybody, before you know anything, which is described as embodying the fury and heroism that comes upon those who are about to die. That is the second item you can pick up. It is a bookend nobody notices until much later. There is a blue substance in that world, taboo but delicious, that people drink to feel healthier. Have you ever drunk that bright blue liquid? The charm seller asks. It's a bit of a taboo, but it makes you feel much healthier, doesn't it? Taken too far, it deforms people. Bloated shells, glowing veins, growths. There is a researcher in that world whose notes track his own decline in real time and end with a sentence he clearly thought was triumphant. The research must continue, he writes. Soon I shall become a source. And the largest concentration of that stuff sits behind a sealed door at the very bottom of the world, in a chamber where something enormous with many eyes is breathing in the fog behind it. Once you take what is in that room, you are ejected and the door closes permanently. One look, no explanation, sealed again. Now let me tell you about the things that were nearly in that world and are not. There was going to be a whole region in the northeast made of bones, a forest of them, hidden secrets and strange creatures, clad in the bones of dead giants, with one of the three sleepers waiting at the end of it, and a temple that had been overtaken by something. It got moved on the map and then cut entirely, because its size would have squeezed everything else. There was going to be a snail village. It appears in one early trailer and nowhere else. The character who lived there was reworked into somebody else entirely. There was a duel planned with the Queen's bodyguard, the one whose corpse you find surrounded by the mantises she took down with her. In the cut version, she is alive and mad with grief, and it is nail against nail, a duel to the death. They removed it. What shipped instead is a body and one word. There was going to be a way to enter other people's dreams properly, not the quick flash of a surface thought you get now, a deep space containing a bug's hopes, fears and secrets. They built some of it and cut it because it felt disjointed and pulled focus away from the world. Think about that for a second. In a game where the most devastating writing is the one-line thoughts you catch off corpses, there was a version where you could go inside and look around. There was swimming, and there are unused rooms built for it still sitting in the files. There was a charm that would have made you die in a single hit, named after the boastful little knight, presumably as a joke. There was a greed charm made of glass that would drop far more money and shatter permanently when you died. There was a charm to highlight breakable walls. And there was a plan for the bottom of the world. When it was being funded, back in 2014, there was a list of stretch goals, and the amounts crept upward. The White Palace was funded. Extra quests and bosses were funded. A console version was funded. A second playable character was funded, and that one eventually grew so far past its original scope that it stopped being extra content and became an entire separate game, announced years later, released years after that. 3 goals were not reached: a third playable character, a handheld version, and a proper expedition into the abyss, a deeper dive into the Lake of Void with 4 more bosses in it. That last one is the reason the abyss feels the way it does. What you can walk through is not, by the intention of the people who built it, the whole thing. One of them has said as much. What you visit is the shore of it. The sea past the lighthouse was meant to go somewhere. The money did not come in, and afterwards there were other things to make, and so what exists is a shore, a lamp, and a horizon, which is probably the right outcome. A bottomless sea you are allowed to fully explore stops being bottomless. The 4 expansions that did get made were all given away for free, over about a year. One adding a dream jewel and a fast travel network, one bringing the circus and the hardest corridor in the whole thing, one mostly quiet engineering work plus the hive, and the last opening up that pale hall of gods. The second of those was originally announced under a different name and had to be retitled about a week before release because of a trademark clash with a mobile game. The people who made it were, for most of it, 2 men in Adelaide who had met at game jams and bonded over an old Zelda sequel. One of them was an animator. Their first collaboration was a small jam game that became the prototype for all of this. There is a detail about the making of it that I find hard to shake, which is how little money there was. One of them has talked about living off leftover sandwiches from the office next door, and about his father handing him $20 for coffee. It has since sold more than 15 million copies. And here is the part that is genuinely strange. Most of that happened after the sequel was announced. A game about a dead kingdom sold most of its lifetime copies on the strength of an announcement for a game that then took another 6 years to arrive. The music was written by one composer who was brought on after the funding succeeded and told to aim for dark elegance. Piano and flute and oboe, an organ for the scholar's tower because it needed to sound sacred and old, a harp for the green. There is a soprano on the city track. Her voice is the rain. Now let me come back down to the small things one more time, because we are nearly at the end of this, and the small things are what stay. There is a bug in that kingdom who was cast out of her social class and is only alive because of it. There is a knight guarding a door who does not know the woman behind it is dead. There is a shopkeeper who used to be the greatest swordsman alive and cannot remember it. There is a girl singing a burial song for her family while something in the walls tells her to kill you. There is a map maker asleep in the back of a shop with nothing left to draw. There is a stag who is the last one, going back to an empty nest and deciding to hope. There is a woman in a mansion who dissolves the moment a flower reaches a grave. There is a thing at the bottom of a hole made of everyone who did not make it up. There are a few threads in that world I have not touched yet, and they are worth a moment. The 3 sleepers are not the only ones who gave something up. There is a shrine in the graveyard listing all 3 of them by name and place, and the last line of the inscription is the sentence the whole kingdom told itself. Through their devotion it says, "Hallownest lasts eternal." It did not. There is a caste in that city who thought a sealed gate would save them. The tablet on it is 4 words long and completely useless. The great gates have been sealed. None shall enter, none shall leave. The plague did not come through the gates. It came through dreams. There was never a door that would have helped. There is a memorial statue of the chosen vessel standing in the middle of the city. polished and heroic, put up while the thing it depicts was already cracking apart in a temple a few streets away. The historian goes and stares at it every time you break another seal, without knowing why he feels the need to. Somewhere in that kingdom there is a hot spring in the deep dark, where a certain wanderer sits and mentions, almost in passing, that there may once have been a hidden village down there of people who wanted nothing to do with the Pale King at all. He does not elaborate. Nobody else ever mentions it. It is one line, dropped into a conversation about the temperature of the water. There is a tribe of mushrooms who worked out how to survive the plague, and did it by having no individual minds to infect. Their tablets treat that as a virtue. The melancholy of disparity they call the alternative, the sadness of being separate. They are, technically, right. It worked. It is also the exact thing the goddess was offering, arrived at voluntarily. There is an entire species of small creature in that kingdom whose only line of dialogue, when you reach into their heads, is a single word: home. There is a mimic among them. It looks identical to the others, sitting in an identical jar, and when you break the glass it turns and comes at you, and what it is thinking is not home. It is kill, empty, other. There is a knight at the top of a garden path who died, guarding a queen who has been unable to move for years, and does not know it. There is a bug who was born already owned, and whose death is described by the person he served as being freed. There is a smith at the edge of the world who died on his own anvil, and the charm you take off it is made of the blades he never finished, fused together, still wanting to be used. And there is one detail about the ending of that story that I think is the quietest cruelty in it. When it is over, the real ending, the one where the light goes out of the world, the plague lifts everywhere at once. Every husk in every corridor of that kingdom stops moving and falls down. Every single one of them was somebody: the miners, the guards, the scholars, the aristocrats at their dinner tables, the girl with the pickaxe and the burial song. They do not wake up. They do not get better. The infection leaving them is not a cure, because there was nothing left in most of them to cure. It simply stops holding them upright. The kingdom does not come back. It just finally, properly stops. And underneath all of them there is a pattern, which took me a long time to notice, and which I think is the actual reason this game gets under people's skin. Almost nobody in it is a villain. The maggot in the armor wanted to protect its siblings. The scholars in the tower thought they were curing a plague. The preacher in the chapel thought the light should be welcomed. The woman who took out everyone's eyes thought she was sparing them. The collector believes it is keeping things safe. The knight in the sewers is guarding a door out of loyalty. The queen bound herself so she would stop. The king was doing arithmetic in a burning building. Even the goddess at the center of it was forgotten first, by people who chose to forget her, and everything she did afterwards was the behavior of something buried alive in a place it could not leave. The only genuinely cruel thing in that whole world is the hunter in the cave, and he is honest about it, which somehow makes him easier to be around than anyone else. The rest of it is decent people making reasonable decisions with incomplete information, decades apart, in a kingdom that was always going to end. The word that comes up again and again in tablets and dialogue and item text is eternal, an eternal kingdom. Hallownest lasts eternal, through their devotion, and every mechanism built to deliver that word bought time and nothing else. There is one thing in that world that is actually eternal, and it is the sea at the bottom of the hole that the king tried to put a harness on. There is another thing I keep thinking about, which is how much of that world happens off to one side. The main story is 4 or 5 hours long. The rest of it, the miner, the stag, the map maker, the 3 estranged swordsmen, the ghost on the stage, the bug with the signposts, the woman with the flower, none of it is required. You can finish the story and never meet half of them. There is no quest log pointing you at most of it. The mender with the diary is a fleeing enemy worth nothing. Somebody sat down and wrote a whole inner life for a creature you are statistically unlikely to ever kill, and then hid his house behind his own death. That is not efficient. It is not how games are usually made, and it is the reason the place feels inhabited rather than designed. Because a kingdom where everything has a purpose is a level, and a kingdom where a sign mender has a crush on a colleague is a world. I want to leave you with one more, and then we will let the lights go down. Near the very end, if you take the path where the goddess is destroyed rather than sealed, the plague lifts and the bodies stop moving and the temple is gone, and there is a shot of the daughter standing outside in the dust. She does not say anything. There is no speech and no farewell. She looks at the place where the temple used to be, and then it ends. She spent her entire life on this. Both of her brothers are finished, one released, one dissolved. Her mother is dead by her own permission. The kingdom she was guarding no longer has anything in it worth guarding. And that is the good ending. That is the one people play for. Which is, I think, exactly right for that world. Nothing in Hallownest gets restored. The best available outcome is that something stops, and somebody is left standing quietly afterwards with nowhere in particular to be. Before we go quiet, let me give you a last handful of the small ones, gathered loosely, the way you empty a pocket at the end of a day. There is a bloated creature sleeping in the crossroads that does not lay eggs. It carries its young inside its own stomach, and the journal says the practice seems to exhaust it, which is why it is always asleep. When you kill it, the stomach ruptures and 7 or 8 living young come out, and you have to deal with them to leave the room. Tucked into that world is a mound of moss in the green that stands up and attacks, and it is not one creature. It is 4 of them who learn to bulk up with moss and live as one, and when you beat it, it splits into 4 small things that flee and burrow away and never come back. There is a large creature alone in the crossroads whose entire family lives on the other side of the map, and it calls for them constantly. The hunter's note about it is a question rather than a description. I hear this beast crying out sometimes as I prowl the caverns, he writes, although I've never actually laid eyes on it. Who or what is it calling for? Its voice is never answered. If you read that thing's mind, you get 3 fragments. Where are they? Do they hear me? Alone, alone. There is acid running through the sewers that the journal describes as bubbling and spitting with a seething hatred of the living, which is almost certainly just flavor, and which is also the only description of a liquid I have ever found unsettling. Off in a corner there is a statue of the king in the lowest region holding a vessel, and it is holding half of one, a leftover from an earlier version where those items came in 2 pieces instead of 3. Nobody went back and changed the statue. The keys were originally going to be specific. There are unused sprites in the files for a graveyard key, a bathhouse key, a waterways key. In the finished game, there is one cheap generic key that fits a range of simple locks, and the shopkeeper's pitch for it is the most honest sales line in the world. Useful, he says, if you like to poke around in places you don't belong. There is a shopkeeper's shelf with a white crystal ring on it that was originally a purchasable item and is now scenery. It has a price in old footage. In the finished game, it just sits there. The charm merchant with the crush on you kisses you at the end of her quest line if you collect every charm there is and buy her blessing. That is the reward: 40 charms and a large sum of money for a short scene in which a large friendly bug kisses a hollow shell. If you spare the smith and then later go looking, his corpse eventually turns up in a rubbish pit anyway, in content added a year afterwards. The travelling circus master, when you read his mind mid-performance, is not thinking about you at all. The flame, he thinks, the ritual, the troupe, the boastful little knight, when you read him in the arena, is thinking about a promise. I came to this kingdom to fulfill a promise, he thinks, a promise of glory. Glory for I, Zot the Mighty. The seer, who spends the whole story asking you to bring her fragments of other people's dreams, describes them in the gentlest possible terms: the precious fragments of light that dreams are made of. Every one of them was taken off a corpse or a memory or a tree that remembers somebody. And in the very first corridor you ever walk down, before you have met a single character, there are tablets addressed to nobody in the world you are entering. Higher beings, they say. These words are for you alone. There is no higher being wandering that kingdom to read them. They are addressed either to a peer who never came, or to whatever might eventually be strong enough to reach the place they were left in, which, in the end, is you. There is one more thing I have been saving, and it is about the very first room. Before you meet anybody, before the well, before the town, there is a short climb down a cliff face in the rain. It is the tutorial, more or less. Nothing in it can really hurt you. And it is lined with fossilized shells, whole bugs, set into the rock on either side of the path, so old they have become part of the wall. You walk past dozens of them in the first 90 seconds, and nothing draws your attention to a single one. That is the design, all the way through. It never points. There is no moment where somebody turns to you and explains what the shells are, or why the miner's song is what it is, or what the maggot in the armor wanted, or which door the knight in the sewers is guarding. The information is simply lying around, at ankle height, in rooms you were passing through anyway. Which means almost everybody's version of that story is slightly different, depending on which corners they happened to look into, and which ones they walked straight past. Some people finish it having never met the girl with the pickaxe. Some never find the stag nest. Some never carry the flower. Some kill the mender and never read his diary. And some never kill him at all and never learn there was a diary. You can put 100 hours into that kingdom and still have somebody tell you about a room you have never stood in. I think that is why it stayed with so many people. Not because it is sad. Plenty of things are sad. Because it is sad quietly, at the edges, in places you had no particular reason to go, about characters who were never going to be important, in a kingdom that was already over before you arrived. So let it go quiet now, the way that kingdom goes quiet when you stop moving. You do not have to hold any of it. Not the names, not who was guarding which door, not which of them knew and which of them never found out. It will all still be there in the morning if you want it, and if you do not, that is fine too. Nothing here needs remembering. Let your shoulders come down a little further than they already have. Let your hands go loose. Let the small muscles around your eyes stop working. the ones that have been holding on all day without being asked. Notice how heavy your arms have become. That is allowed. Let them be that heavy. Notice how far away your feet feel. Let them stay there. Somewhere up on the surface there is a small town with a well in the middle of it, and one old bug standing near the entrance with a white flower he was given, watching the wind, not expecting anyone tonight. Below him, grey crossroads with nothing moving in them. Below that, green tunnels breathing slowly in their own soft light, and a sleeping thing beneath a lake who has never said a word. Below that, mushrooms and standing water, and a village of mantises who kept their minds, sitting with their weapons down. Below that, a city where it has been raining for longer than anyone can remember, water running down the windows of houses nobody lives in, lamps still lit in streets where nobody walks. Below that, sewers, and a knight asleep beside a door he swore he would never open. Below that, a graveyard, and a lake, and a nail planted in the ground beside the water, where somebody finally sat down. Below that, a basin with nothing in it. And below that, a shore. Black sand, black stone, a flat dark sea with no far side, and a lighthouse burning at the edge of it that nobody has ever explained. Let it burn. It does not need you tonight. Let the small pale shapes on that floor stay curled where they are, all of them, together, with nobody left to climb away from them. Let the miner in her alcove keep singing, and let nothing be listening from inside the walls. Let the old stag rest at his station with the bell unrung. Let the map maker sleep in the back of his wife's shop with every map finished. Let the three swordsmen stay in their three corners of the world, and let one of them, tomorrow, say something. Let the flower reach the grave. Breathe out. Notice how the room around you is doing the same thing, settling, cooling, going quiet the way a building goes quiet after everybody has gone home. Let your breathing go long and low, in and out, slower than that. There is a stage in the dark with a ghost on it who finally has an audience. There is a hall with 3 thrones in it, and one of them broken, and nobody sitting on any of them tonight. There is a temple in the middle of a dead kingdom, and whatever was chained inside it is not straining anymore, and none of it is thinking about you at all. Think, if you like, about the kindest thing in that entire world, because it is very small and it is easy to miss. A dying woman in a ruined mansion grew a flower she could not deliver herself, and asked a stranger to carry it, and the stranger crossed most of a hostile kingdom without being touched once in order to put it on a grave. That is the only thing in Hallownest that actually works. Not the seal, not the vessel, not the tower of scholars, not the plan. A flower carried carefully by somebody with no reason to bother. Let that be the one you take with you. So let the rest of it drift out now. The corridors, the stations, the lamps, the rain, the long, slow collapse of a kingdom that was promised it would last forever. Let it go out with the tide, a little further each time you breathe, until it is only a shape on the horizon, and then not even that. The stage is empty. The station is quiet. The rain is still falling somewhere, and it is not falling on you. And you are somewhere else entirely, somewhere soft, somewhere warm, somewhere with a ceiling over it and no ledges anywhere and nothing that needs guarding. Going down and down and down into sleep. Thank you for spending this long, quiet night with me, and with all of them. Rest well, sleep deeply. There is nothing down there. Good night.